I almost hit leave meeting. It's just one of those days. So hello, everyone. Today is October 20th. It is our, we're well into our 12th year of these conversations on a weekly basis in the Clean Network. So today is a presentation day. So it's really exciting to have you all here with us. We'll get into the presentation in a second, but if you have any announcements that you want to share for the community, for the Clean Network, that would be good. We'll do that first. And if you want to introduce yourselves, just put your names in the chat. That's also a good thing. So chat, there we go. Any announcements? Anybody? Hand signals work. Come on.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say 12 years, Frank, because when Mark sent out a notice about the 10th anniversary, I said to myself, oh no, it's been longer than that.
Yes, yes. In fact, I've actually unearthed the exact moment. I know the location, but it was at the NCSE annual meeting in January of 2008. No, I'm sorry, 9, when we started the Clean Network. So there was the Climate Literacy Network. So, but it's definitely way more than 10. Anyway, so announcements. And I'm looking around for hand signals.
I have one. Can I go?
Please.
Can I go, Frank?
Please.
This is Katie Boyd, and I apologize. I'm keeping my video off because my internet is just being really bad this morning. But we have a live virtual learning session geared towards elementary students, but also good for middle school and anyone really. Tomorrow about ice and climate, if you're interested or know students interested in joining. And then the Clean Webinar series is still ongoing. We have another of those this afternoon. Karen's talking about teaching the human aspects of climate change for teachers, and we'll continue that for the next 3-ish more weeks after that as well. So thanks.
Thanks, Katie. Yep. Yes, Ingrid.
I haven't been able to make these calls for a while, so it's possible my colleague Don Haas might already have announced this. So forgive me if I'm repeating, but we've been working on a new exhibit on climate change and energy for the Museum of the Earth, our Natural History Museum. And that's going to open in November, but we've launched an online version of the exhibit, and I'll post a link to that in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Ingrid. Very exciting. I did just post Thursday, we have the launch of the community review of the US ACE framework. The panels are all created. Everything is ready to go. And we will launch the 2-week window of the community review of the ACE framework. It's coming together really well. So if you want to get in and get your fingers in the clay, on Tuesday at 1 o'clock Eastern time is your day to get oriented, but you can still do it without actually showing there. It'll all be recorded. So please join. These are becoming consequential times, and this is a big move that we're making. So please join us in helping us do it together. Others, anybody else?
I also have an announcement. I'm Anna Gold. I'm at Serious Education Outreach directing the group, and we are actually, because we talked about 10 years of clean earlier, Karen, you brought that up. Tomorrow morning, there's going to be an ECOS call, and I just put it into the chat, where we talk about the last 10 years. Mark is going to be co-presenting, and Tamara and Frank and I talking about the history of clean. So if you're interested, join the ECOS call tomorrow.
And Anna, if I remember right, we're also going to give like a directionality to the next 10 years. This work is not done. It's not like 10 years, we're good. No, we know there's so much more. So thank you, Anna. That's great. Anybody else? Lindsay, anything going on at Climate Generation that you want to bring forth? Just calling you out.
Yeah, that's fine, Frank. Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay. I'm the Climate Change Education Manager at Climate Generation. I think Megan's here too, kind of participating in the background. We have a lot going on. But tomorrow we have a workshop called Supporting Youth Educators that's coming up. I can share a link in the chat. We have a panel of 3 diverse youth that work with YEA, which is our youth environmental activist group, and they're going to be sharing about their personal perspectives on being a youth leader in climate change, I guess, climate change movement and justice and education. But then also they're going to be sharing about how you can engage your youth virtually right now, what that looks like. So I can put a link in the chat, but it's tomorrow evening, 6 p.m. Central Time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Sure thing, Lindsay. I had a feeling.
Always
Um,
something, right? Always
Yeah, that's why I had a good feeling.
something.
Anything else?
Yeah, I just put in the chat. My name's Christy Buffington,
Hey, Christy.
and I am on the ancestral lands of the Lower Tanana Dene people. And hi, people from Polson and Pablo and everyone on the Flathead Reservation, where I also used to live. And Jermaine White was one of my inspirations when she launched the Bull Trout's Gift curriculum. So that was amazing. Anyway, so I'm really honored to be here. My announcement is simply that there is a new After the Ice series, and I put it in the chat. And it is showing really from an Indigenous perspective how the loss of sea ice is affecting Bering Sea communities.
Thank you, Christy.
Nice to see you, Christy.
Yay, it was great connecting with you at AGU as well.
Thank you.
Looks like we just lost Katie, but Patrick, it looks like you picked it up. So I love, you know, I've seen so many other people do virtual recently, and they've just been having trouble, but we're just smooth. It's lovely. Anything else? Wait time's all right. All right. Well, if there's something that comes and you want to bring it forth, obviously the chat will have time for some maybe we'll have some time at the end to get into any I forgot. So it's a great honor to have the presenters we have here representing the Living Landscape Project. But I'm going to actually turn over the introductions to Bonnie Murray from NASA. Because you played a contributing role, an enabling role in this. So Bonnie, you want to introduce the panel and get us started?
Sure thing. Thank you, Frank. I want to celebrate another anniversary as we start to move in that direction. And that is, I guess it's 11 years now of Frank and I working together on the TRACE Collaborative. And there's information online about that, and this clean work grew out of that collaborative also. So really wonderful to have that. That was a NOAA, NSF, NASA partnership. That's the tri-agency. So congratulations on that anniversary as well.
I'll put that in the link. I'll put it in there. I'll find it.
Yeah. Yeah, we now, thanks to Frank and some efforts there, have a new catalog to share, and so that's a really good resource as well. So yes, hello everyone. I'm Bonnie Murray. I sit at NASA Langley Research Center, and I work on a project called MAINSEA. We love our acronyms at NASA. MAINSEA is a funding line. The M represents a funding line, and that is MUREP. And so MUREP funds minority serving institutions, which includes tribal colleges. So that's where the tie comes together here. So MUREP is the Minority University Research and Education Project, and the AINAN is for American Indian Alaska Native STEM Engagement. So that's the project through which the award went out to SKC. So it's interesting, this work actually started back in 2014. It was very carefully and thoughtfully done. And back in 2014, an award went out to SKC, to Salish Kootenai College. And the award was to create this curriculum that is now Living Landscapes. And it has been such a privilege to work with Jermaine and David, and now to meet Riley. And I also want to mention working with Adrian Layton. He was the PI on the project. He's a professor at Salish Kootenai College. So it's been wonderful to work with all of you. And I'm just so delighted that the project is complete and we're now rolling it out here, and it will be part of the Clean Collection. So thank you to Katie and Patrick and Frank for that work and putting that together. I just want to say a couple words about David. David has been the glue that has held things together, and he'll be doing that role here again today. David is really wonderful at having access to things. He's the go-to person. So thank you, David, for all that you did over the years, and for being here today to do that as well. And Jermaine, thank you for your leadership and your thoughtfulness in putting all of this together and knowing exactly what timing needed to be followed. And quite frankly, for pushing back when the timing wasn't right. That's something that many of us on this call have experienced with awards to different institutions. You know, the federal government has this timeline in mind, and sometimes that's not what's best. And so thank you for the guidance that you provided, Jermaine, as we work through this project. And I want to give a special shout out to Riley, because if any of you were at AGU last year, you might have heard Riley speak. Riley gave a presentation along with Jermaine last year, and it was just extremely inspiring. So thank you for your courage in presenting last year, Riley, and making it out to AGU, and for being here today. And congratulations on being a college student now also. So very excited to have all of you here. And I'll turn it over. I think it's Jermaine who's going to be speaking. We're
Yes.
excited that this curriculum will be part of CLEAN, and I look forward to having you tell us more about it, Jermaine.
Thanks, Bonnie, and thanks everyone, and welcome. I'm just delighted to talk about our project. David's, as Bonnie said, he is the tech genius and my collaborator for decades, and I'm delighted. He has a PowerPoint presentation, but first, let me introduce myself. I'm the Native American Engagement Director at the Mansfield Center at the University of Montana, and I formerly served as the Information and Education Program Manager for the Confederated Salish Kootenai Tribes Natural Resources Department. David, do you want to cue up the first slide, please? Sure. Thanks. So during my time with CSKT, I was privileged to work for several years, as Bonnie said, on this project called Living Landscape. It's a project funded by an award from NASA's, thank you, David, Earth Systems Technology and Energy Education for MUREP, for Minority University Research and Education Projects. As Bonnie said, I think NASA really does love their acronyms. So the project included developing a climate science education package that targets Native American students nationwide. Its purpose is to strengthen climate literacy in tribal schools and colleges and develop highly skilled and motivated Native Americans in the climate-related sciences. But what I think is most important is it integrates the wisdom inherited from our elders and ancestors, what we call our traditional ways of knowing and understanding, or some people call native science, with the very best Western science. So while scientists have been investigating and talking about climate change for decades, the voices of tribal people have largely been left out of that discussion. And as tribal people, our closeness to the land and the community of life it supports, and the knowledge that comes from living in a place for thousands of years, gives us unique perspectives, insights, and approaches that can help our, that can help us as we adapt to climate change. David, would you cue up the next slide, please? So one of the examples we give is traditional tribal calendars are one of the ways to measure the change. In these calendars, months or moons are often named for the primary activity done during the month for a natural event that occurred reliably every year at that time. So for thousands of years, maybe conservatively 12,000 years, those calendars stayed the same, and tribal people could depend on them. But now the calendars have become out of sync with the natural world. For instance, the traditional calendar of the Bitterroot Salish and Kalispel tribes of the Flathead Indian Reservation in Montana, the name for May is Spetum Spkani, or month of the Bitterroot, because that's when the tribes traditionally harvested bitterroot, our first food, and we began our first food ceremony. But because of climate change, and the climate is changing, bitterroot is now often ready to dig at the end of April. The month of August, Sha Spkani, which means month of huckleberry, but huckleberries are now ripen in July. It's the same in September, Spkani, the month of chokecherry. Chokecherries are ready in August, sometimes even in late July. So the tribe's calendar, thousands of years old, has become out of sync with the natural world. You know, we can take another month, Skwitlu Spkani, November, the storytelling month, our traditional stories. This is our history, our very history. The stories of coyote and all the other animal people are part of a seasonal cycle. And the stories can only be told or discussed during wintertime when snow's on the ground. So traditionally, the elders brought them out with the first snows, and it was a joyous occasion. And that would oftentimes arrive in late October or early November. They'd put them away again when the snow was gone, usually in the spring when the thunder wakes the hibernating animals. But lately, we've had winters without snow in the valley and snow that lasts only a few days. And it's meant that perhaps for the first time in the tribe's histories, we have experienced years when there was confusion about when to share our most important stories, our very history. The impacts of climate change have rippled through tribal communities, affecting us in profound and often unpredictable ways. So indeed, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change found that Native Americans from Alaska to Florida are disproportionately vulnerable to climate change because our lives, our cultures, and economies are so closely linked with climate-sensitive resources. But that vulnerability is also a strength. Living close to the land with the collective knowledge that comes from living in a place for thousands of years provides tribal people with perspectives, insights, and approaches that can help both tribal and non-tribal communities as we try to cope with and adapt to the climate crisis. An example of this is fire management. When non-Indian visitors and strangers, when settlers arrived in the Northern Rockies, many of these people came from European backgrounds where fire was associated with hell and destruction in a built environment. It was considered destructive and dangerous, a view that contrasted sharply with traditional knowledge of fires like our people, Salish and Kalispel, who understood and embraced the benefits of burning and were skilled in using fire as a management tool. Probably the most powerful management tool we had on this landscape was fire. Today, prescribed fire is used extensively to manage forest and grassland communities and to protect life and property. So let me, Bonnie talked a little bit about the project team. Let me tell you a little bit more about it. David, can you cue up the next slide, please? So Living Landscapes has 3 partners. First of all, Salish Kootenai College received the award, the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes, and NASA's JPL. SKC oversaw the project. As Bonnie said, Adrian was the PI, and they developed the climate science and remote sensing content. CSKT oversaw and developed all of the cultural content and native science content. We did that through working with cultural advisors, culture committees, elders, and tribal communities. JPL provided mentoring opportunities, which were hugely valuable, and advised on science content. And our consultants, again, were invaluable. They advised on cultural content and native science, evaluated the project, and provided a profoundly important historic project perspective. So let's talk about the project components. David, would you cue the next slide, please? So the project has 6 components. There's a high school learning unit on climate science. There's a college level introductory. David, will you keep these rolling, please? There we go. A college level introductory climate science course, a climate lab course that can be taught at both the high school and college level, climate focused remote sensing course, a social networking site, and again, mentoring between JPL climate scientists and SKC students. So the complete package, thank you. The complete package called Living Landscapes is available online, not just to tribal educators throughout Indian country, but also to any teacher anywhere in the country that wants to use it. And this is something I really want to emphasize. Living Landscapes is not just for tribal schools. It's one of the most robust climate science curriculums available anywhere. It's entirely web-based, so anyone can access and use it. And both native and non-native students, I believe, will find it relevant and compelling and will learn from its strong conservation message, a message grounded in traditional native cultural values, values that remind us to take care of this earth, our community, and each other. Okay, let's go on to the next slide, David. So Living Landscapes is culturally based and it's place-based. If a climate science course hopes to engage Native students, it's important that it's place-based as well as culture-based. So besides the fact that for Native peoples, culture is inseparable from place, the issues surrounding climate change from one region of the country to another are really important. A student in the Southwest may have trouble appreciating the concern over receding sea ice and shrinking glaciers in Alaska, but that same student might be very much interested in a discussion about whether pinyon pines will survive climate change. So we developed a climate science course that's both that is both culture and place-based. So let's go to the, thanks. In both the Living Landscapes climate course and the learning unit, each of the essential principles of climate science is placed within the context of one or more tribal cultural values. These values make up a unified whole, at the center of which is a deeply held attitude of respect toward the land, water, plants, and animals, and a way of living closely and in community with one another. So there are really two giant fires that our cultural values are seated on. One is a relationship with the natural world, one is a relationship with each other. For instance, principle 3 is about how life on Earth affects the climate and how the climate affects life. The cultural value for the principle is relatedness. So in this context, relatedness refers not just to human family relationships, but to the natural world as well. Among many of us as Native people, the family caring relationship, it extends to one's relationship to plants and animals, rivers and mountains. So it extends not just to each other, but also to the natural world. The incorporation of these cultural values is one of the ways that Native science differs from Western science. While the latter strives to objectify and so generally does not encompass either ethical obligations, Native science does. So placing the principles within the context of a cultural value, in this case, relatedness and reciprocity, the science becomes more relevant to Native students, especially when it's done in a concrete way. So David, let's go to the next slide, please. 5 cultural advisors oversaw our project. Johnny R. Lee is a Salish elder. He was raised by his grandparents. He's also Riley's chepe or grandfather. And Salish was his first language. He works tirelessly to pass on that language and our traditional cultural way of life of the Salish and Kalispel people. Tony Inkashola has served as director of the Salish Kalispel Culture Committee since 1995. He was raised in part by his grandparents, Palasi Inkashola and Agnes Woodcock Inkashola in St. Ignatius, where he still lives. And Robin Wall Kimmerer is an enrolled member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation and professor of environmental and forest biology at the State University of New York College of Environmental Science and Forestry. So she's at SUNY ESF. She's author of many wonderful scientific articles in the books Gathering Moss, A Natural and Cultural History of Mosses, that was published in 2003, and Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants, 2013. Vernon Finley is the director of the Kootenai Culture Committee and specializes in Kootenai language preservation efforts, as well as doing language and cultural presentations for schools and other organizations. He was born and raised on the Flathead Indian Reservation here in Montana. He grew up close to his grandparents, to whom he credits much of his cultural worldview. Rosin LaPierre is a professor in the Environmental Studies Department at the University of Montana. Her former education is a combination of science. Her undergrad degree was in physics, maybe her graduate as well, Western religion and environmental history. She spent several decades learning Blackfeet ethnobotany and ecological knowledge from her now late maternal grandmother, Annie Mad Plume Wall. She grew up on the Blackfeet Reservation in Montana, where she spent significant time with her grandmother and aunts learning about plants, landscape, and weather patterns. So we were really fortunate. We had these astonishingly, just these astonishing cultural advisors. I'm so honored to have them be on this project. David, let's go to the next slide. Let's talk more about the project. So I mentioned earlier that Living Landscapes is a place-based climate science course. Instead of developing a single introduction to this climate science course and learning unit, we developed 7, one for each of the 7 cultural areas of the US. Though each regional course includes information about all the other regions of the country, its focus is on its particular region. Not only does this place-based approach make the topic more interesting, students need to know what a changing climate means for their community, their future, and their culture. So let's go to the next slide. Thank you. Teachers can also use it to present to an entire class, showing videos and demonstrating interactive graphics, or assign specific principles or regions to students to explore. The curriculum is also designed so students can work through the material independently. And we don't have a Hawaiian component, but I think that there's lots of information here that would be useful to them specifically. I just saw a comment pop up. So let's talk a little bit about the learning unit in course. NOAA, NSF, and AAAS developed 7 general climate science principles. The first, the sun is the primary source of energy for Earth's climate system. Second, climate is related by complex interactions among components of the Earth system. Third, life on Earth depends on, is shaped by, and affects climate. Climate varies over space and time through both natural and man-made processes. Our understanding of the climate system is improved through observations, theoretical studies, and modeling. Human activities are impacting the climate system. And 7, climate change will have consequences for the Earth system and human lives. And then we added 2 more. One, the greenhouse effect, because we felt this concept is so fundamental that it deserves to be its own principle. And 2, we can take action, because we wanted students to feel empowered rather than hopeless. Oftentimes these climate science education projects and other information is so dire, and it is dire, but we really want students to feel empowered and to feel like they can take action. So the principles outline information developed by all of these lead agencies, and we believe these principles are important for individuals and communities to know and understand about the Earth's climate, the impacts of climate change, and the approaches to adaptation or mitigation. Our learning unit takes these general principles and fleshes them out with a ton of in-depth information, videos, interactive graphics, climate model and tools, interviews, diagrams, and more. So I want to talk about one part of this project that we're really excited about. And it's about a 10-episode video series we produced, which includes 1 episode for each of the principles. The series follows 2 students. Riley is here with us today. He's one of them, as they learn about climate change and how the changes are affecting their community. Everything from bitterroot and chokecherry harvest to storytelling to wildfires to stream flows and native fish to grizzly bears and bison. So let's show them one of these videos now, David. Let's show them the introduction. These are really short videos. They're just 2-3 minute videos. So we're going to show you the introductory video.
This place is our home, the home of the Salish, Pend d'Oreille, and Kootenai people for too many generations to count. I have grown up on this land like my Sile and his grandpa before that. My name is Alyssa Pretty on Top, and I live on the Flathead Indian Reservation. Each year we gather along the banks of the Flathead River for fall hunting camp. When we hunt deer and elk or harvest the bitterroot for our feast, we are continuing our traditional way of life. It's hard to describe, but there is a softening influence of being in nature. These plants and animals are important because they have always been there for us, to nourish and to make our lives good. This year, my brother harvested his first deer. He told his story around the fire. We were all proud of him.
Good deal.
My grandpa says we are the dreams and prayers of our ancestors, and that we have a responsibility to leave this world a better place. He thinks children today are like buffalo born behind the fence, with little awareness beyond their modern trappings. He says our ancestors knew the lines of the trails and curves of the hills as intimately as the lines and curves of their mothers' faces. We have to learn how to be in relationship with the earth again, and how our generation can protect it. We do it for our baby brothers and sisters, for our little cousins, and for everyone that we will love that hasn't been born yet. In the distance, I hear the constant coal trains rushing by, and I know there are many choices ahead of how to live on this earth. Sometimes it feels overwhelming, but I do believe we can hold on to our traditions. This dream isn't new. It's been lived from the beginning of time, and we've made it this far. Perhaps like my Yaya's beadwork, we can make a life that is strong and beautiful, one little step at a time, joining many little steps together.
Thanks, David. So I'd like to show you the depth that we go to in each of the principles. This slide shows a diagram of Principle 5, which is about the greenhouse effect. As I mentioned, each principle begins with one of the video episodes, like this introductory video we just looked at. The next slide provides an overview of the principle and what students need to know. Then there are from 5 to 10 slides that explain the sub-concepts of the principle in much greater detail. This is where most of the science content lies. In the next slide, we'll look at one of those sub-concept pages in more detail. The sub-concept pages are followed by a slide of the local relevance of the principle. That's followed by a slide on misconceptions, misunderstandings associated with the principle. And then finally, each principle ends with a knowledge check or a quiz. So David, let's let's look at a typical subconcept page. So each subconcept includes some combination of the following: a summary, and depending upon the concept, one or more short videos, various graphics, interactive tools and maps, interviews with scientists, links to resources. So we have a huge webliography and bibliography of resources like the National Climate Assessment and an in-depth feature article on the topic. Next slide, please, David. So the Climate Learning Unit meets national and state science education standards. For example, in Montana, they meet Montana Common Core requirements, Indian Education for All, Next Generation Science Standards, and it exceeds Montana content standards for science. So to assist you as a teacher, each principle includes a teacher page. It summarizes the science of the principle, discusses the importance of the principle, challenges you might encounter teaching the principle, how to use the principle in your classroom, activities your students can engage in to better understand the principle, and references about the principles, and then additional resources. This is really, really rich in, and you can peel off as many layers as you want. So let's look at the labs, David. The unit also includes 10 climate science labs. Students can obtain and analyze local climate data. They can use climate models to predict their climate future. They can assess impacts on fish and wildlife, and observe trends in stream flows, glaciers, and wildfires. And then let's look at the tools. The unit also includes a full array of powerful state-of-the-art science tools to learn about the the climate. So that's a pretty brief overview of the project. We're, kind of a breakneck view of it. And David, do we have a couple of minutes to show the fire video, and then that will be a great introduction to Riley. Let's look at that real quickly if we can. This is another one of the introductory videos about tribal relationship with land and
This
fire.
is my home, the home of Salish, Pend Oreille, and Kootenai people for too many generations to count. I've grown up on this land, like my scheppe and his scheppe before that. My name is Riley, and we're going into a wildfire to see how the climate affects a burning landscape. With ever-increasing temperatures due to climate change, severe wildfires are becoming the new norm. Ron Swaney, a fire management officer, has been fighting fire here for decades. He's seen firsthand how fire behavior has changed.
Three things that cause fires to spread: fuels, weather, and topography. And the only one that's the variable is the weather. We're getting hotter, we're getting drier, and the potential is only increasing for wildfire based on just the climatology and the changes that have occurred. So it's been a dramatic change, both in the number of fires that we get and the amount of acres that we burn.
As these brave firefighters work to manage ever bigger and more frequent wildfires, it's important to remember that not all fire is bad. My Sepa tells me how the tribes use fire as a tool to care for the land. The forests were kept healthy by thousands of years of burning by our ancestors.
Respect the fire and use it in a good way. It'll help you. So with the huckleberries, the people knew this a long time ago.
Yeah.
And they burned back, so in a few years they get back to that berry patch, and the berries are bigger and cleaner, and it makes food for all the animals out there too to come in. It's kind of a natural thing, for the fire burning.
He says there was a position of great honor in the tribe, that of Sphram, the one who makes fire. The old ways are still relevant. What the Sphram used to do, they now call prescribed burns. They are the same thing, lighting fires at a time of year when it will help the forests instead of hurting it. That makes dangerous fires less likely. And it's hard for us to imagine today because for over 100 years, we have been trying to keep fire off the land. The result is that the forests have grown dense and are now much more prone to fire.
Our fire seasons start earlier, they last longer. We'll go into October, close to November with very little moisture, elevated temperatures, and still quite a bit of fire potential.
If we have the courage, compassion, and endurance of these firefighters, we can face the challenges of climate change head on. I think we have a lot to learn by looking at how our ancestors used fire. The land needs the help and knowledge that comes from thousands of years of living in this place.
Thanks, David. I'd like to now introduce Riley. I think some of you got to meet him earlier. He's been an absolutely joyous part of our team, and I'm so honored and delighted to introduce him. Riley, do you have something you'd like to add about this project?
Yeah, sorry my camera's off, my internet's being crazy, but you know, in high school, I did not, really care about this project. It really opened my eyes. I actually did one of my papers my senior year on it, and he got me graduated. But no, it really opened my eyes, and now important to know because my mom always says we need to make sure the land is healthy for our kids and the grandkids and all that, and generations down to come. So it was really cool, I guess.
Thanks, Riley. It's we have a question for you. We're lucky to have you with us today. Thanks so much for your work on this project. Sweet. That's a lovely comment. So will you stick with us for a while? We're gonna take some questions. David, you and Riley and I and Bonnie, maybe we can answer questions if there are any.
Yeah, Jermaine, do you mind if I take just a couple of minutes to talk a little bit about the website that I've developed for this on Clean?
Please
just
do.
Introduce that real quick. Thanks. Just really quick here. I just wanted to show everyone. So I was connected with Jermaine and David last year around AGU, and can you see my screen now?
Yep, sure can.
Great. So this is something I've been working on pretty much since then, slowly but surely. I've been working with Jermaine, David, and Bonnie about how we can incorporate this into Clean. Obviously, we are taking some of the resources, especially the lab courses, work really well for ingesting into the Clean collection. So those, several of those are currently in review, and we're going to keep trying to ingest a few at a time, each review cycle for the next till we get those in the collection. And then the other thing I'm doing, though, something that David, Jermaine, and Bonnie mentioned, that they really focused a lot of this project on trying to develop it, making it quality, which I think they did an amazing job of, and didn't get as much time and money from their grant to market it out there. And so that's something that we thought Clean could try to help provide and be that conduit to reaching teachers with this. So beyond just putting it into the collection, I wanted to do a little bit more to highlight it because they've done such a nice job of really focusing on those climate principles. And we thought that tied in really well with some of the teaching guidance that we have on the Clean page. So I've developed this web page, and I will put the link to this in the chat in case anybody wants to check it out. It is literally just this morning I made it live for showing you all today. But I'm going to work with the folks who manage our manage Clean at CERC, and we're going to put little boxes for the different literacy principles on some of our literacy principle pages as well, to kind of link back to a more culturally relevant version of learning about these principles. But then this is sort of the main landing page that I've developed to try to just describe the project, say what it is, and link back to the Living Landscapes page itself. So that's part of why we're doing this today, because I wanted to bring this out to Clean, and I'm going to work on trying to market this through our teacher networks and things like that over the next couple of months here. So just thought I'd mention that. And then yes, please take your questions. Thanks for letting me say that.
Oh, thank you. That's why we're here today.
So let's transition to questions. Thank you so very much for this special project, and Katie, thank you for doing that. I love it. I love where you've gone. I love your leadership. So let's keep going. Do we have questions? We have about 12 minutes or so. And I'll take myself off speaker view so I can actually see if there's any hands. Anybody?
My question in the chat, but I can read it as well.
Sure.
Are the online college classes available for credit through Salish Kootenai College? And just if you could explain how that works. And I'd also be really happy to share this opportunity for K through 12 educators and also students who are college students.
David, can you speak to this?
No, you're still muted there, David.
You can hear me now.
Yep,
Yes.
There you are.
Okay. They're available for credit through the college. It's also taught at the college, but that's something, if you're interested, we could work on for people that aren't going to enroll at SKC, that they could receive college credit for. I'll have to talk to Adrian Layton, who is our PI, and see if he can set something like that up. It isn't set up right now for people who aren't going to SKC.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Please, if you do get that worked out, let us know.
I will.
I appreciate what Katie said about increasing the understanding and awareness of excellent work, and this would be part of that. So let's keep that going. Yeah, Ingrid.
First, I want to say it's beautiful. I'm just sort of quickly looking at the website as you've been presenting. It's really beautiful. Do you feel like the curriculum is best gone through in order, or do you think it's something where people can sort of go into pieces of it and it's still get something out of it?
I think, David, maybe I'll start and then you can add to this. I think you can start wherever you want to with it. Whatever is most relevant to you. Use the pieces that are that fit you best, and maybe come back to other pieces. I think take what works.
I agree, Jermaine. I think that's exactly right. It's structured so that it can be taught as a full course from beginning to end. But if you're teaching climate change and you only have a week or 9 days for the topic, or 3 days, you can certainly go in and pick the pieces of it that are relevant to what you're talking about that day or that hour.
Wonderful.
Frank, I'd like to add something to that if I could.
Please, go ahead.
I think that an excellent use of this curriculum as well would be to add it to whatever you're already teaching in whatever region you live in. Because what I find very unique about this curriculum is that it brings in the tribal perspective. You know, it brings in that awareness and that cultural knowledge from thousands of years. As much as NASA as an organization is studying, or as an agency is studying climate change, and NOAA, you know, that's a baby science. It's maybe 400 years, right? To use the words of Paulette Blanchard, you know, that's a baby science. And so, to be able to draw on and to be enriched by the knowledge of the tribal elders and the knowledge that's contained in this curriculum and the perspectives that are contained in this curriculum, I think it would be an excellent coupling to include whatever region you're in as part of whatever's being taught in that place. And it would also be a way to bring the tribal voice in, because often we acknowledge that the tribal lands are most heavily impacted, and yet that tribal voice is not always lifted and included. And so it would be an incredibly great way to do that as well.
I appreciate that, Bondi. Thank you. Any other questions? I'm holding mine just because I talk too much. Anything else?
I have a
Pat?
question.
Oh, yes, Elizabeth.
Hi,
Welcome
thank
to
you
you,
so
Patrick.
much for this presentation today. It's outstanding work. I'm very excited to share it with my colleagues here in Washington State. And we have a small amount of funding for our Climb Time project to look specifically at high school teaching through a tribally focused lens. And I would love to share this with those colleagues as a resource for that. And as part of that work, I'm wondering if the curriculum is licensed as an open educational resource.
Great question. Thanks so much. So we come from a culture of giveaway. So we have a responsibility to give as much as we get. So when we receive a gift from NASA and their collaboration and cooperation, it is then our responsibility to freely give. So this is a giveaway. We're giving this to everyone. It's please take it as our gift, and use anything and everything you can.
Jermaine, just to clarify, that's a wonderful way of describing the Creative Commons. It's such a much more entry point, easy way of doing it. But is it clear on the website that that's the case? Just so that it feels like everyone is it's possible.
Well, it is a web-based project, and it's out there. I don't know how else we can say, please take our gift. We
Right.
give this to you. We give it to everyone because we have been gifted with this incredible gift from our elders and ancestors. So we wish to share it. David, do you know any other way that we can?
Well, we
be explicit about it?
certainly, you could write down your thoughts on that, and we could certainly add a statement to that effect to the website.
Sure. I love it. So Elizabeth, if there's anything that you feel that would help it feel open, and you're not seeing it, that what I'm hearing is David and Jermaine would be open to working with you on that, or anybody else. So
Can I add
Please.
one thing though?
Of course.
It is a cultural prohibition. Everything is in its time and in its place. So we bring coyote stories out in the wintertime, and we tell them when there's snow on the ground. So in the storytelling, in the section on coyote stories, we would ask that you respect our cultural mandate and save those for the wintertime. And so when somebody, and Ingrid, I think you asked earlier, is there sequence, pacing, timing, how do we use this? Please save the coyote stories for wintertime. And other than that, we give it all freely, and use what you can, take what you can.
Love it.
It's an amazing gift. Thank you so much.
And Elizabeth, thank you for being here. The connections between Climb Time and the living landscape is a rich and wonderful thing. This is what CLEAN does well. Just makes things happen that should be connected. So wonderful. Patrick, did you have an additional point?
Yeah, just I was curious, in so many classrooms, connection to Indigenous peoples is taught as history, not as a present topic, which does a huge disservice to introducing that connection to students. And I'm wondering, within this curriculum, are there tools given or advice or anything to help connect and support students working with and learning more about the peoples that are still in their areas?
Gosh, that is a great question filled with insight and thoughtfulness. I really appreciate it. And this is a time where we are beginning to ask those questions and roll back the images we've learned from Westerns that tribal people, indigenous people are either remnants of a once noble culture, heathen savages, or dead. So we're trying to provide a more balanced and honest telling of who we are as Native people, and I think that's one of the components of this project that I value, that I deeply value, and you know, and I'm hopeful that other tribal people will add to it and include their place-based knowledge as well. We can share the gifts that have been given to us, but it's not appropriate for us to share anyone else's gifts. So I'm talking around your question. I don't know if that provides you enough information.
Yeah, I guess what I was curious about, is there a kind of network or a way that if classrooms engage with this material, they would know who to reach out for to connect with in their area, to learn some of those local knowledges and support those peoples?
Great question. I don't, you know, we had hoped that our project would be able to allow us the time and the resources to connect with tribal leaders in each of the regions. But because of the, you know, naturally there are constraints with each of the projects. So we were not able to take that next step. I would encourage you to do that in the area where you live, you know, to if there are culture committees, if there are tribal offices, if there are cultural leaders, you know, to reach out. And I would just remind people that oftentimes the person who is maybe teaching a class at the college about a particular cultural activity or knowledge is probably also the Head Start bus driver and is a song leader for ceremonies and is also probably, you know, has 42 other things. So, you know, I would be patient and reach out in your area. I think that would be really a great benefit to you and your you and your teaching or your understanding of Native science in the region where you live.
Mm-hmm. And I'll add to that, Jermaine. Thank you. I think that was very well said. And what I'll add is that, Patrick, that's a great question, but it's not one that was within the scope of this project, because that would be an ongoing process as well. You know, that's going to change who you should reach out to and who would be the person to connect within each area might change from time to time. And so it wouldn't really be within the scope of this project to keep that documentation up to date. But certainly that would be the responsibility of the user to be able to find local connections to add to the work that's being done by the components of this curriculum.
But Patrick, it also signifies another type of work. Like this project is a project, and what we are finding in all these conversations we've been doing for the past number of years is, while those are incredibly important, there's another set of activities about building network and community and connections and coordination and collaboration, which are much longer in time and they're different. And so what you're totally calling for that space that has shown up multiple times, and we just haven't found the right funding or stable investment in that side of the equation to make these projects really come to life. To put it in the project structure is just, it just won't work. It's just too much for this time scope of the projects. That said, we are out of time, but Jermaine, if you indulge me just for a moment, as the federal lead for the Climate Literacy Guide, I very much appreciate you pushing it beyond its original architecture and expanding it as you saw fit. And one thing we know that it's out of date. That was 2009 when we released the second version. And, you know, perhaps in the near future, we should kind of rethink it and expand it. And some of the work that I've seen that you and this project have done, but also others have pushed it to do other things. Maybe what is important to learn and know now has changed since 2009. So that's not really a question, but I would imagine you would be, and that your partners would be interested in contributing to that widening process. Is that a fair ask? If we get to go
That's
there?
a fair ask.
I hope we get to go there. But that's beyond us at the moment, but we will see.
Thank you so much for inviting us to be here today. I'm honored, and it's a great privilege to have this partnership and the ability to roll out our project in one more way. So thank you.
The gift is well received, and thank you for joining us and doing such amazing and inspiring work. And Riley, I appreciate you going back to school, but I love the photographs of you at the high school level. I love the journey, so let's keep it going. Thank you all. I guess we're just going to keep going. See you next
week. Yes, we are.
We got a lot more to do.
Thank you, Frank. You're not done yet.
Oh, I still got hair.
Oh, be well, everybody. This
Yes.
was a fabulous presentation. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for joining, and thanks especially to the Living Landscapes group, Jermaine, David, and Riley and Bonnie. You all have been so great to work with and just made such an amazing curriculum here. We're really excited about it.
Well, right back at you, Katie. I just sent a note in the chat. Thank you for all of your hard work in getting the components together to go into Clean. So yay.
We will continue to figure out how to lift up this excellent work. That is part of what we do. Katie, thank you. I appreciate that. Awesome. Let's pick it up next week or next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Frank, if you've got a second.
Yep, I do. You want to stop
Do you
recording?
need me, Patrick and Frank, or?